I never expected a single sentence from my neighbor to change how I saw my entire life. It happened on an ordinary evening. I'd just come back from a date, nothing special, just polite smiles, small talk, and that awkward goodbye that already felt forgettable. As I unlocked my door, I ran into Emma, my neighbor from across the hall. She was holding a bag of groceries, her hair slightly messy, her smile familiar in a way I'd never really questioned. "Good date?" she asked casually. "Yeah," I shrugged. "I went out with a girl from work." She paused. Just for a second. Then she looked at me, not angry, not dramatic, but with a quiet seriousness that caught me off guard. "She won't love you like I do," she said softly. I laughed it off, assuming it was a joke. But Emma didn't laugh back. Emma had been part of my life for 3 years. She was the neighbor who checked on me when I had the flu, who shared food when I worked late, who listened when I complained about my job or my failed relationships. I always thought of her as just kind, reliable, safe. But that night, after she wished me good evening and walked away, something felt different. I replayed her words again and again. Not because they sounded romantic, but because they sounded true. I realized I knew nothing about Emma's past, her struggles, or why she was always there for everyone else. And for the first time, I wondered if I'd been blind to the one person who had shown me consistent care without expecting anything in return. That question followed me into the night, quietly unsettling everything I thought I understood about love, connection, and the people we overlook every day. I didn't sleep much that night. Emma's words echoed in my head, not loudly, but persistently, like a truth tapping on glass, waiting to be let in. By morning, I told myself I was overthinking it. People say strange things. Neighbors joke. Life moves on. But life didn't let me. Over the next few days, I started noticing things I'd somehow ignored before. Emma always waited until the elevator was empty before getting on. She flinched when someone raised their voice in the hallway. And despite her warm smile, there was a quiet heaviness behind her eyes, like someone who'd learned to carry pain without letting it spill. One evening, I found her sitting on the stairs, groceries beside her, hands shaking slightly. "Everything okay?" I asked. She tried to brush it off, but kindness has a way of breaking through walls. Eventually, she told me the truth. Emma worked 2 jobs. One paid the rent. The other paid off medical bills left behind by a mother who'd passed away too soon. She never complained because, as she said quietly, "Someone always has it worse." That sentence hit harder than anything. I realized then how often Emma had chosen kindness when it cost her energy, time, even comfort. She had listened to me talk about dates, dreams, and disappointments, while carrying her own burdens silently. Later that night, I thought about the girl from work. She was nice. But she didn't know my bad days, my fears, or my habits. Emma did. She knew me in the small, human moments that don't make it into romantic stories, but make real love possible. The realization scared me. Because sometimes, the deepest love doesn't arrive loudly. It lives next door. It shows up quietly. And it waits, hoping one day you'll finally see it. I started finding excuses to be home more. Not because I planned anything, at least that's what I told myself, but because being around Emma felt grounding. We began sharing simple routines, morning coffee in the hallway, late night talks by her door, small laughs over burned toast, and old TV shows. Nothing dramatic. Just comfort. One night during a power outage, we sat in the dim light of our phones. The city outside was unusually quiet. That's when Emma finally opened up. She told me about her last relationship, how loving the wrong person taught her to love carefully. How she learned that real affection wasn't loud promises or grand gestures, but staying when things got difficult. She said she stopped expecting love to rescue her, and instead tried to be love wherever she could. I realized then why her words had stayed with me. "She won't love you like I do," wasn't jealousy. It was honesty. Days later, the girl from work invited me out again. I almost said yes out of habit. But something felt wrong. I canceled, not because she was bad, but because my heart was finally paying attention. That evening, I knocked on Emma's door with 2 cups of takeout coffee. She looked surprised. "Long day?" she asked. "Long realization," I replied. We talked for hours. Not about labels or expectations, but about fears, hopes, and all the small ways people miss each other while searching for something new. When I left, Emma thanked me for listening. That's when it hit me, she'd been listening to me for years. As I lay in bed that night, I understood something simple but powerful. Love isn't found. It's recognized. And sometimes, it's standing right in front of you, hoping you're brave enough to choose it. The next morning, everything felt different, like the world had shifted slightly, but just enough for me to notice. Emma and I didn't talk about what we were becoming. Instead, we focused on who we were. We cooked dinner together for the first time, laughing over mismatched plates and a recipe neither of us followed properly. It wasn't perfect, but it felt real. Comfortable. Honest. A few days later, something unexpected happened. Emma didn't show up for work. Or the next day. When I finally reached her, her voice was weak. She'd collapsed from exhaustion, working too much, resting too little, always putting herself last. I rushed to the hospital, guilt tightening in my chest. How had I missed the signs? How had someone so kind been invisible even to me? Sitting beside her bed, I held her hand for the first time. She smiled faintly. "I didn't want to worry you," she said. That was Emma, protecting others, even when she needed help herself. I stayed. I brought food, handled calls, and made sure she rested. For once, she wasn't the one giving, she was receiving. And in that quiet hospital room, something unspoken but powerful passed between us. When she was discharged, life didn't suddenly turn into a movie ending. But it changed in a way that mattered. We supported each other. Shared responsibilities. Shared silence. One evening, as we watched the sunset from the stairwell window, Emma finally spoke. "I meant what I said," she whispered. "I love you." Not perfectly, but honestly. I looked at her then, really looked at her, and felt something deeper than excitement. I felt home. Because love isn't about who arrives first, or makes the biggest impression. It's about who stays, who cares, and who chooses you every single day, especially when you're too tired to choose yourself. Life didn't suddenly become flawless after that. But it became true. Emma recovered slowly, learning, reluctantly, to rest, to ask for help, to believe she deserved the same care she'd always given others. And I learned something too. Love isn't proven by words spoken in perfect moments, but by presence in imperfect ones. We never announced our relationship. It unfolded naturally, in shared mornings, grocery lists on the fridge, quiet check-ins after long days. The kind of love that doesn't need an audience. One evening, months later, I ran into the girl from work again. She smiled, asked how I was doing, and I realized something surprising. I felt grateful. Grateful that things hadn't worked out. Grateful that life had gently redirected me toward what I needed, not what I thought I wanted. That night, Emma and I sat on the floor, backs against the couch, talking about the future. Nothing extravagant. Just hopes. Stability. Kindness. A life built on mutual care. She rested her head on my shoulder and said, "I was scared to say that day what I felt." I smiled. "I'm glad you did." Because that single sentence, spoken quietly in a hallway, taught me the most important lesson of my life. We often chase love like it's something rare and distant. But sometimes, love lives next door. It brings soup when you're sick. It listens without judgment. It stays when things are heavy. And when you finally recognize it, you don't feel fireworks. You feel peace. Message. The greatest love stories aren't about finding someone new, they're about seeing the person who's been loving you all along.